TCU has lost 2 corners in fall camp for a significant amount of time, and Cam Cook missed the last few practices. Sonny Dykes had updates. We'll give you those updates next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate you making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever it is you get podcasts, so please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We are over. Fall camp is over. If you didn't know, fall camp ended on Friday. Frogs apparently held a closed-door scrimmage on Saturday. I believe they had Monday off, and then starting on Tuesday, they're getting ready for Stanford. We are less than 2 weeks away from real deal football being played and finally getting a look at this team. And it's exciting, man. I mean, we've been talking about this group, the strengths and weaknesses that they have, what could go right, what could go wrong. So I'm just thrilled to see them on the field more than anything, just to get a taste of like, okay, this is what this team is going to be. Whatever you want to call it, is always sort of an adventure. But we are nearing closer to getting a sense of, okay, this is what this team's identity is going to be as Sonny Dykes enters year 3 of his tenure. And he had a press conference over the weekend where he gave updates on some injuries that have been taking place and some guys that have been out lately. So if you missed it a few weeks ago, I believe Steven Johnson had this in the 4-Star Telegram first, but Avery Helm and Vernon Glover both went down with knee injuries. We didn't have a timetable, and we still technically don't have a timetable. He said that those guys are out indefinitely. I will say, based on some information I've gathered from people that have been talking to me, I don't think either of them will be back anytime soon. So pretty significant injuries, it seems like, that they suffered. And for those guys, it stinks, man. I mean, I really feel for them. I know Avery Helm worked really hard to actually battle back from an injury this past offseason and was in line to be like the number 1 corner. Malcolm Kelly, the wide receiver coach at TCU, has talked about how one thing he's noticed with Andy Avalos is that they play a lot of – they're going to play a lot of press man coverage, putting corners in one-on-one situations, allowing them to use their physicality to jam wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. And that's very similar to what Avery Helm did at Florida. I think he was set up to have a big year and be a good player. And so losing him is a big deal. Vernon Glover is one of the most exciting young players on this team. He had done a really nice job working his way up through the depth chart. Looked like he was going to be rotating in and out this season and maybe could be a factor like when they go into nickel and dime packages and they need extra defensive backs on the field. And so I hate it for those guys. I hope that they can get back as soon as they can and rehab really well and just turn their attention to focusing on that. As far as what it means for the football team, these are significant losses because, as I just shared, there's going to be more responsibility for these corners to cover at a high level this upcoming year. Now, the good news is you brought in a guy like Travis Broughton, who has been a starter at Utah for a few seasons. So I think they were expecting him to be a starter anyway, but now he sort of takes the place that Avery Helm had. And then another guy that they really seem to like and that has had a good fall camp and had a good spring is Lamarian James from Old Dominion. And Sonny Dykes also mentioned Shannon Canada and Javon McIver, who have been getting reps since those 2 guys went down and should have the ability to rotate in and out with his defense. So, I mean, the good news is going into this year, it felt like the priority that Andy Avalos and Ken Wilson had when they got here, based on what they did, was pretty obvious that it was getting more depth and quality in that DB space, whether it was a corner or safety. And so they recruited that area hard in the transfer portal. Brought in a lot of different guys. So the good thing is you have quality players there. But that being said, it's sort of like the O-line in that, okay, you felt like you had a good room, and then you lose Cade Bennett for the season, and now all of a sudden everything kind of shifts. Everybody has more responsibility now. So he's out. Well, now you have to possibly slide either Colton Deary or James Brockermeyer to guard to cover up his absence. And then a guy like Remington Strickland, who was kind of projected to be more of a depth piece, well, suddenly he's got to get ready because he might be he's one play away from being a starter. And it affects other guys on the roster too. And you're kind of having to do some moving and shaking. And so it's the same thing here with the corners now. You felt good about the depth you had. Well, then you lose two guys. You lose one starter and one player who's going to get a lot of snaps. And now everybody has to sort of step up and move around. And while I'm excited about the pressure that this defense is going to bring, and I know there's nothing that helps a corner more or safety more, like DBs in general, than getting to the quarterback, like those guys in front of them getting to the QB. Bud Clark said after a practice a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a week ago, he was like, hey, I'm super excited about this defense because we don't have to cover guys as long because they're, flushing the quarterback out of the pocket. They're getting home. They're making sacks. They're creating pressure, getting hurries. Like they're doing all the things that you want your defensive line to do. Bottom line is, if you're going to be in, man-to-man situations, even with the idea of, hey, we got some guys in our front six, front seven that can create pressure and wreck shop and create havoc, you still have to have corners that can cover. And so a lot of responsibility is now going to fall on the shoulders of Travis Broughton, Channing Canada, John McIver, the transfer from Austin P, Lamarian James, the transfer from Old Dominion. Everybody kind of has to shift up in what they were doing and what's expected of them. And so that's going to be a big change. I wonder also if maybe they consider, and I don't have a ton of insight here, but Austin Jordan's a guy that they brought in from Texas, and I feel like they've slotted him as a safety. Like that's where they would prefer to play him. But with these injuries, he's been a corner in the past. So do you at least give him an opportunity to get some reps, get some snaps there? And if nothing else, he just is another guy who could be a break glass in case of emergency type of player, so that if he's called upon in that role because you have any more injuries, then he can move over to that spot pretty seamlessly because he understands what's expected of him and what he's going to be asked to do. But, yeah, they can't really afford any more injuries at that spot, unfortunately, because you already lost two guys who you're really counting on to be big-time players for you. So they're out indefinitely. Sounds like it's going to be for a while, though, and I would expect Travis Broughton and Lamarian James to start the season as those two corners on the outside, and then McIver, Canada, and maybe a few others to rotate in and out as they start to, try to get accustomed to this new defense and playing a lot of man coverage, playing on a press, being physical, and working their way through that process. Another update he gave, because according to Jeremy Clark from 247, Cam Cook was out of practice for a few days. And on Cam, he said, let me get the quote here so I can make sure I get it right. Cam has a little bit of a hamstring. He could have practiced the last few days. Our intent was to rest him. He had gotten so many reps in camp. He had banged a lot of reps. Really the thought before the injury was to scale him back. This kind of sped up the process. He'll be back next week, and I would anticipate him being as good as new in 2 weeks. So kind of load management situation, I guess you could call it that. I mean, he's had a very physical fall camp, and even in the spring has gotten a lot of reps. And they just wanted to make sure that he's all good and all set for the season opener. So getting a chance to kind of rest. I do hope he can step in as soon as possible and get to practicing again, though, because, I mean, as much as I think he's going to be a good player, he's still a young player. And you've got game preparation coming up. That's a guy that you want to be as involved as possible with that lead up and ramp up to the game itself, just because, I mean, Cam played some last season, but he wasn't your number one featured back. And that's going to be an adjustment for him and an adjustment for this team and this offense this upcoming year. And I spoke with Jamie Plunkett on Friday, had him on the show if you want to roll back and check out that episode from a couple days ago. I mean, we're in the middle of talking season. So what I mean by that is everybody's saying the right things. Everybody's positive. Everybody's excited about the potential of different guys. And they think, okay, this dude could be a player, right? But it does feel like, whether it's coaches or players themselves, everyone has gone out of their way over the past few weeks to say, listen, Cam Cook's got it. Like, whatever it is, he's got it. He understands how to play the game. He's really good. He's got explosiveness. He's got that home run ability. And honestly, Amani Bailey was really good back. And I think he did a great job last season to churn out 1,200 yards during what was kind of a tumultuous year. And it wasn't a great year for the offensive line. They were inconsistent, but he still found a way to get his. But one thing that I thought about Amani going into the year, because it felt like he had shown this in spurts the previous season when he got some opportunities, was he had some explosiveness. And he had that ability when he hit the second level to really take off. But there weren't a lot of those big runs, I mean, in general, they just didn't have explosive plays throwing the ball either. But apparently Cam has that next gear that he can get into and really leave guys in the dust. So that's awesome. So we'll see. I mean, this is a very unproven running back room from a production standpoint. But there's excitement about Cam Cook. And another thing that Jamie said that I thought was intriguing about the running backs, Trey Sanders apparently has cut back on some weight, lost a little weight this offseason. So I thought it was interesting that they brought in Dominic Johnson from Arkansas, because Dominic is sort of your prototypical big back, maybe somebody that can be effective in short yardage situations. I think they use him as a fullback or an H-back at times. And then you also got Trey Sanders, who was sort of in that role last year for TCU. But if he slimmed down some and maybe added some explosiveness and some speed, then maybe he's just more of your prototypical change of pace guy. Slide into that role of being kind of the power back, that whether it's in goal line situations or, 4th and 1, 3rd and 2, be someone who can get you some yards to keep the chains moving. So we'll see. And then you also got Trent Battle and Nate Palmer and Jeremy Payne, who have done nice things in camp as well. So a lot of options there with talent, even though it's not a ton of proven production this upcoming season. When we come back, another thing that Jamie talked about with the quarterbacks, I'll get into that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. You love sports. I mean, you're listening to this podcast about TCU athletics, and if you're a frequent listener, I know that you're probably a true sports sicko like I am. You want sports to go on year-round. And the good news is that it does, but there are certain times of year where things are a little more dead. We're kind of in that season as we near the end of the summer. We're in the middle of August here. There's really just Major League Baseball on a day-to-day basis. But the good news is FanDuel is the official betting partner of Major League Baseball. The other good news is that FanDuel is giving daily boost and bonuses to their users during the summer months. So right now, every day, there's a boost or a bonus, some special deal that FanDuel's rolling out there. They're trying to get you involved in everything that's happening during what some people would call the dead time of year. But we got preseason football now. College football is going to start in like 2 weeks. We've almost reached the end of that summer dries period. So it's the perfect time to join FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. Official betting partner of Major League Baseball and a proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So in that interview with Jamie Plunkett from Friday, another thing that I wanted to bring up was I asked him at some point about Haas Haney, right, who's currently your third-team quarterback, true freshman, as you would expect, behind Josh Hoover, behind Ken Seals. He's just trying to kind of get the lay of the land, but he's a dynamic athlete. He's also got a really good arm too. And I've openly wondered through this offseason is there a possibility that TCU tries to find a way to use him in some sort of special package at quarterback? Because they weren't really able to run the ball last year with the QB. I mean, Josh is not somebody who they're going to use a lot in the run game. And it was kind of magnified because they had the injury to Chandler Morris, and then it was, I mean, he was the dude, and you have to keep him healthy, you have to keep him upright. So, bottom line was they didn't use him in that capacity. Well, Haas has that ability. So, are they going to showcase it this upcoming season? And I don't know if he talked to the coaches about this, or if this is just his kind of feeling, or he had inside information. But he said one thing that he was confident about was that they were going to redshirt him. So he would have 4 games, and that would be it. And that tells me that no, they're most likely not going to use any sort of special situation package where he would be involved. Because if your plan is to keep his eligibility intact and only playing for 4 games, then it would make more sense to whether it's, I mean, most likely that game against Long Island. Could you give him a quarter? Could you give him a half? Depending on how far ahead you are, that would be a chance to get him some good reps. And then hopefully at times throughout the season, they're blowing people out and they'll have that chance to say, you know what, we can throw him out there, let him run the ball, let him throw it around a little bit and feel confident that he's going to be okay and we can maintain his eligibility. I mean, I totally get it. That is, since college football's been in existence, well, maybe not that extreme. But for a long time, that's been your thought with freshman QBs. Redshirt them, which, I mean, for a long time, that meant they didn't touch the field at all. Redshirt them, keep their eligibility intact, let them learn, develop, hold the clipboard, get all the play calls down, all those things. But I'm not a huge fan of this, honestly. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I know that I'm not projecting anything. I'm not saying I don't have inside information here. We are living in a totally different world than college football now. I understand that Haas is a legacy, that when TCU started getting involved with him and his family, he was pretty quick to listen and then end up committing, and he stayed committed through, a long recruiting process. And it's awesome. And I know him and his family are very loyal. But we still live in a world now where if you're a talented player coming out of high school and you don't see the field soon, then that transfer portal is tempting. Now I'm going to trust that there's been very clear and open communication with everybody involved as far as like what expectations are, what they expect him to do, what their plan is for him. But still, I think that's a risk anytime that you have a talented player and you don't let them play. Now, I get it. I mean, Josh Hoover is a starter. That's what I expected. So it doesn't surprise me that their focus is like, okay, we have a guy we feel confident in. There's no need to throw him out there to the wolves right now. Let's just let him develop and play, and it'll be fine. To find a way to get him involved in this offense. Because I think having athleticism at that position, which Josh is not going to, I think Josh can be effective at times running the ball. I feel like he understands how to run a zone read, and he can surprise defenses and sneak up on defenses by pulling the ball from time to time and getting yards with his feet. But he doesn't have that next level explosion that Haas does. And when you have a dude like that, I just think you have to find a way to get him on the field. And I get that it's difficult, and coaches are balancing like 10,000 different things now. But I would just, I don't know. I don't really see I'm having trouble seeing the big picture here. I think if there's a way to get him involved in this offense and allow, a change of pace and an opportunity for him to really thrive, and it doesn't have to be every game, but I would love to see him in more than 4 games. But we'll see how they handle it. Sounds like their thought process is let's make sure that his eligibility is intact, that he's good, and we'll kind of move forward from there. So just something to note as TCU gets ready for this upcoming season. When we come back, I'll get some of your thoughts from Friday, and we'll wrap things up here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. Before we do that, though, I do want to tell you about another one of our great sponsors, eBay Motors. Listen, mess around with your vehicle. If something's wrong with your car, or if you just need to level it up, you have some way that you really want to make it awesome and make it more comfortable, eBay Motors is the place to go. Millions of parts for your MVP. They have the eBay Guaranteed Fit program, which I've talked about a lot before, but it's awesome. You just put in the make and model of your vehicle, and you put whatever part you want in your shopping cart, and they will tell you immediately, yes, this is the right part, or no, you need to go find something else. eBay Motors, they make it simple for you. Whether you're trying to level up your vehicle to peak performance or just keep it running smoothly, millions of parts for your MVP. You can win every time with parts that fit your ride at ebaymotors.com. All right, before we go here on Locked On Horned Frogs, some of you had thoughts from Friday's episode, and I want to get to that. Vince Pryor says, yes, it's tackle football. Let's go, Josh. Let the freshmen play and get them involved. And he still thinks Sonny is on the clock this upcoming season. That tackle football part is in reference to Jamie Plunkett said that one thing he's been super impressed with Andy Avalos is they've spent a lot of time in practice, from what he has seen, working on just basic tackling drills. And if you think back to last year, that was a huge problem, right? Like from the Colorado game on, they struggled to get guys on the ground. And they want to be more physical this year. They want to get after guys. And so they are focused on, okay, how can we, as a team, get better at that basic aspect of playing the game? And a couple seasons ago, they were a very fundamentally sound defense. They didn't blow people away, and they weren't world beaters, but they could get stops when they needed to, and they created turnovers. And so if they can get back to that, that would be a huge improvement. But it appears that they are really working hard to bring that physicality back to the forefront, which I think is exciting news because, yeah, you're right. I mean, it comes – this is a game blocking and tackling. And if you can't do those things well, you won't be successful. Like, that's just how it is. Even now with more finesse football being played than ever, you still have to do those basic things at a high level or it's not going to work. Fred Gibson said, well, it seemed like most of the practices were no tackling and shells. Seems a little soft and hard to know who's really ready to make the best contribution to the team. I mean, I know they were in shells for a while. They went in full pads, though, for the last week, I believe. So, you know, it's different now. I mean, I remember, well, I'm not going to compare my high school football career to what they're doing at the high level at TCU. But, you know, we were in shells for like 2 days, and then it was full pads from there on out. I don't think they handle it that way. It is kind of wild still hearing about things like, you know, load management. I'm sure that's always been a thing, but it does feel like it's getting more prominent in college football these days. But, I mean, I think TCU is not the only one doing it this way. I would imagine that everyone's kind of copycatting each other. So I don't feel like they're going to play a lot of teams this year that haven't had similar practice schedules and those kind of things. So I don't think they're going to be totally behind the eight ball in that regard. But it sounds like Sonny and the defensive staff as well have just made a bigger point as far as like, we have to be a physical football team this year. And they do. Like, if they're going to be good, if they're going to be a successful team, they're going to have to be physical at the point of attack. And so that's a big key this upcoming season. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we're here all week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.